Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the MyFootballWriter podcast. It's episode 6, and you may notice there's only 3 of us today. That's because Jack, also known as NCFC Payne on Twitter, he's currently busy doing other things. I'm going to let him talk about that when he comes back. I'm not going to spoil any surprises, but you're still here with us 3. I'm Freddie Humphrey-Wakefield, and I'm joined by Henry Miller, who's having a bit of a technical issue with his laptop, so sorry if that's just a bit of a weirder layout for him. And I'm also joined by Will Grant, also known as Norwich Youth on Twitter. So before we delve into any footballing pain and joy that we've seen over the last few days, let's just start off in general. Apart from football, how was the rest of your week? How have you been, and what's been going on in your lives over the past few days?
Mate,
yeah, it's Freddie, good, thank you.
My life is literally dictated by football, so it's been crap. I'm sorry, I'm straight in there. So, yeah, I've had a bit of a illness this week, but I've recovered just in time for the podcast. I might be a bit croaky here and there, but yeah, England, man.
Yeah, for me, on the whole, it's been all right. I guess I picked up a longer shift at Radio Norfolk, so that was quite good. I helped out with their coverage of the Lionesses game. Which was a good game. It finishes 2-1 to England at Carrow Road. So yeah, that was really enjoyable and really good to work on that coverage with the team.
Yeah, no, absolutely fantastic to hear, mate. Because you said it ended 2-1, and then the Lionesses getting further on in their Euro qualification. But what's that like, really, to see an international team play at Carrow Road? Of course, it'll be a much different crowd as to what you're expecting anyway. But what was that like, just to see sort of some more starlets at Carrow Road, albeit from the women's games? Not as many people may know them as opposed to the men's team, of course, but that's sort of just naturally how it is, unfortunately. But what was that like in terms of, just to see a national team at Carrow Road? What was that? It was quite a good atmosphere. I had to listen to Radio Norfolk's commentary during it, and it sounded like it was proper rocking in there from minute one.
Yeah, I think it was quite surreal, to be honest, because sort of similar to the England men's team, we've all been on a journey with this squad as well, from winning the Euros to then losing the World Cup final, ironically, to Spain. So a lot of these people are household names. So to see them at Carrow Road was quite surreal. I'm just gutted that Lauren Hemp couldn't get her goal, because last time the Lionesses came here, she also didn't score. Yeah, that's the only downside, I guess. But no, it was really good. The whole place was rocking, and I think they got about 20,000, which for how long the women's have had like 6 games at Carrow Road, and the attendance has just increased every single time they've played there. So yeah, you have to take your hats off to them for that.
Yeah, it's absolutely superb. No, that's just brilliant, and almost a near sellout crowd at Carrow Road for that. That's superb. Of course, you mentioned there about Lauren Hemp unable to score, and Norfolk girl started her career playing for a Norwich City girls side, so she's come a long way, and now is playing at Manchester City, one of the best women's teams out there, competing well in the Women's Super League. But we've got to turn our attention back to the men's team. Henry has kept his scarf out despite of what really was a gut-wrenching defeat for England. They've become the first ever men's nation team in the Euros to reach back-to-back finals and lose them both, which is just typical, really, when you think about the fact England haven't won a major tournament. Well, the men's side haven't in 58 years. That's now going to become at least 60 with the World Cup in America if England are to qualify. But with the state of their qualifying group, they should cruise it, as they usually do. But that's something which we could probably do. You could probably do a podcast on itself, let alone one that's associated with Norwich City. But really, it was, in hindsight, it was a very fortunate way of reaching that final. There is no doubt about that. There was a lot of elements of luck and individual brilliance, albeit that is something, well, a tale that us 3 are very familiar with what we saw before England began. But in all credit to them, they got to the final. They were proving doubters wrong in a way of getting that far, and then the game went the way it did. And again, it just seemed there was no sense of urgency, at least in my opinion, when going forwards. There was nowhere near enough bodies put forward, even when a goal down, albeit Cole Palmer did equalise before Mikel Oyarzabal got the late winner. But there was, again, just causes for concern in terms of these talented individuals weren't playing well. Is that down to the manager? Is that down to just them? Or that's something of which I'm sure the FA are going to look at, and that's something, again, we can talk about Gareth Southgate's position. But to start off with the game, where do you think that just went wrong, or where did it continue to maybe go wrong for England within that 90 minutes? Because again, it just seemed lackluster despite of such a big occasion for them in Berlin.
So I think we probably lost the midfield battle. I think that was where we looked the weakest, and I think too many individuals have been really lackluster at this tournament. I know he's produced moments of magic, but Jude Bellingham, I don't think has turned up to his standards this tournament. I think he's been really poor. I think Kyle Walker has been really poor, whether that's playing a right back or right centre back. And I just think too many people haven't really turned up. Harry Kane, although he scored 3 goals, which we'll see him share the golden boot, I believe, he hasn't turned up as well. And it's almost been like playing with 10 men with Harry Kane. So whilst you mentioned there about Southgate, while Southgate has to take some responsibility as well for not seeing us get over the line, it is very much a joint effort with the players, and the players need to also take a look at themselves, maybe, and with a little bit of pride for getting to the final when the chips were down. You know, that's something we can't underestimate. But the actual performance in the final itself just wasn't good enough.
I mean, like, if you deep it as well, like, Bellingham's probably played about 80 games this season as well, and that is just absurd. And I think it kind of showed, for me, it felt throughout the whole tournament, really, like, it was just so much like fatigue amongst the team, really, which is why I also adamant of Anthony Gordon to play. Obviously, that wasn't to be the case. So I think a lot of it also comes down to fatigue, but I also think Spain have beaten Germany, they've beaten France, so and they're just being a much better team throughout the whole tournament, really. And England have just had some amazing moments, really, and not kind of made a really good performance throughout the whole tournament, really. So yeah, Spain are an amazing side, and I think I'd even go far to say I think Rodri right now, for me, I think he's probably the best player in the world. I know it's all centered around forwards. You've got Mbappe, Ronaldo, and all that, but the fact that Rodri is so integral for Spain and Man City as well, he is so far clear in his role, and I think he's probably the best in the world as well.
Well, we'll have to see who wins the Ballon d'Or. So there's your shout for Rodri. But even when he went off, I think you could sense. Well, I watched the coverage on BBC, but you could sense right there, even just in the commentators' voices, there was an element of excitement when they heard Rodri was going off. There was that of brilliant. They've taken off one of the best players, one of the most consistent players in world football, who everyone knows is so talented with Manchester City. What was it? He had something of a 50 or 60 game run where whenever he played, they didn't lose, which is just ridiculous. I mean, for that long, well, I mean, for a player to be in a team that's always winning anyway, but still, he's been a massive integral part for both club and country. And when he came off, everyone, I think, associated with England at the time thought, well, this is it now. This is the time to push on and go for it, because this is such an important player who's now off the pitch that, this is, they're missing a crucial piece to the puzzle, but that ended up not being the case. Again, I think the lack of urgency cost England, I think, but that is something which has been the story of the tournament. They didn't attack games. They never really were on the front foot in any games, apart from the opening game with Serbia, the 1-0 win. But, England played 7 games in that tournament, and maybe for 60 minutes, they looked as if they were playing well, which, you can put that down to a manager, you can put that down to players not playing well, but It's just when it's on so many consistent games and you know the talent, as Henry said, Walker not at his best, Bellingham nowhere near his best, that everyone knows that this kid can do. He scored over 20 goals and provided, he had double-digit goals and assists for Real Madrid this season in a debut season there, where instantly he's chucked in and he's got to be the star man, and he continued to rise to the occasion. But it seems this time maybe that got to him. He had the whole Hey Jude advert going on, but these are all meant to be players who can cope under big pressure situations, and they can provide in big pressure situations. They've done it their whole career, but it just seems that any England team who seems to get far over these last nearly 60 years just cannot get over the line. This has been the story for England for, the last 30 years even. You have Italia 90, you have Euro 96, you have the World Cup of 2018, even maybe the last World Cup as well, the Euros from 3 years ago. I mean, I wasn't even alive for half of those tournaments, but I know the story of how talented an England team can be and how they just can't seem to do it. They cannot seem to just get over the line and win that trophy. And I'd love to hear your thoughts on this. Do you think that the whole 50 years, 60 years now it's going to be, and the whole big expectation of everyone knows you're such a good player, do you think that, albeit a player can block that out, it's evident they can block it out because we've got a Champions League winner in the team. We've got several players who have won trophies and have scored so many goals and broken records. But do you think that maybe when it could be different for playing for England, do you think the pressure does actually get to them and they know the heavy expectation and the media criticism? And do you think that they just can't cope with it, really? Is that maybe what's holding them back? Could that be an unhidden thing, maybe, where these players are being held back by media expectations and maybe that plays in their heads too much?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a really unique challenge playing for England. I think it's so much different to club level, and the fact that you're in an environment for about a month's period as well. So it's quite a intense environment, I like to say. But I also think the main problem is really when you've kind of got players who are so used to playing such a fast, direct, and also quite a brave team out of possession as well. So you've got likes of Foden and Palmer who are kind of been brought up to press. I mean, you've got Southgate who was so happy to sit in a low block, such mid block. It's such a contradiction, and they're not used to it. And I think some players are really, really feeling the effects of not being able to perform. I think Phil Foden, I think everyone was about to lyrical about him last season, and rightly so. But you look at his stats this Euros, I think it's 7 games, 0 goals, 0 assists. And I think that's just a perfect example of a player who is just not used and is struggling to adapt to a more defensive style of play. And it's really hard to kind of gauge because on one side, Southgate has brought so much success for England playing this kind of style of football. Look, I know it's not attractive, but it gets you some really good results. But on the other side, England manager has also got to try and get the best out of his team. And his team are used to playing on the front foot more often. So, look, I think it's very, very difficult. I'd like to see maybe perhaps if Ollie Watkins would have started the game. I know it's so kind of difficult to try and get Harry Kane out of the team. And I'm not saying for 1 second we should do that, but I feel maybe if Ollie Watkins was actually playing and starting, there might be a more better and more bolder approach. But I definitely think it's a kind of clash of mindsets with the players and the manager. And I think the players just haven't been able to kind of buy into this quite conservative style of play.
I think as well, you look at in the week, I think both Saka and Southgate said if we win this, it won't only change our lives, it will change millions of people's lives. And say, for example, if you win the Champions League as a player, that is life-changing. But that won't change the lives of millions of people back home. So you have to have that added weight on your shoulders to know that what you're doing is absolutely astronomical. So that's why I think, there is a certain element of pressure when it gets down to the big semi-finals and finals that even the best players in the world are unused to. But it is just a shame because the more I thought about it, the more I thought I would actually do it yesterday. So I think that's why it got me. They always says it's the hope that kills you, and it definitely was last night.
Yeah, No, it really is. That has been the story of England. The whole point of Baddiel and Skinner's song "Three Lions" is all about you get your hopes up and you get carried away with it all to just be let down, but you'll do it over and over again, and that's going to be the case. That is just how it's going to be in 2 years' time. We're going to do it all over again in the USA, Canada, and Mexico when they host the next World Cup. Albeit the USA had some security issues with the Copa America final last night, but I'll leave that out because apart from Jose Cordoba, who's already been knocked out, I don't really have much else to care about the Copa America, and Argentina ended up winning it, but no surprise, they're the world champions. So just the last touch on England before we go on to, well, what we're always meant to be covering, and that is Norwich City. If Gareth Southgate is either to step down or the FA make the decision that he should no longer be the man in charge of this talented group of individuals, who would you go with to replace him? Because there's this whole talk of if England had a proper manager, if they had a better manager who plays good football, we would win everything. But I think that's a very unfair thing because look at the previous managers England have had with great squads and they still never won anything. But who would you go with to be the man in the dugout for England if Gareth Southgate isn't the man to be trusted going into the next World Cup in 2 years' time?
Yeah, I mean, you go, Henry. Sorry, mate.
Who I think they'll go for and who I would go for are probably two different things. First of all, I think it's important to say that the FA absolutely adore Gareth Southgate. So they've got a contract for him on the table until the 2026 World Cup. So they want him to stay. Whether we lost the final or won the final, the FA have made it clear that they want him in charge for the next World Cup. So if he is to leave his position, it will be solely his decision. But if that is the decision he is willing to take, you're looking at natural successors, someone like Eddie Howe at Newcastle. I think it'd be perfect. Obviously, it'll be difficult to prize him away from Newcastle, but when your country calls, that might be the one job that does pull him away from such an interesting prospect. Also, Graham Potter, I personally wouldn't go for him, but he's another name that I've seen people talk about. And then two others from me, slightly rogue ones, but Lee Carsley, who's doing a lot of good work with the England youth teams. I think that would be pointless because it's just basically a Gareth Southgate regen. So we may as well just keep Southgate for the time being. I know Lee Carsley has won trophies at youth level for England, but for me, I don't know, maybe he should have a club job behind him before he then takes that step up. Or if you're going down a different avenue and you aren't really fussed whether the England manager is English, I'd go for someone like Mauricio Pochettino, someone who's got a proven track record of sort of bringing young players together and properly like uniting a team. Because I know he didn't win anything at Tottenham or even Southampton, but those players would absolutely die for him. And I think the England squad at the minute would die and run through brick walls for Gareth Southgate. So someone like Pochettino, who has got that bit more experience than Southgate, but is sort of very similar in his philosophy of sort of progressing young players and promoting camaraderie within the squad, would be a really good appointment.
Yeah, I've actually quite in the camp for Lee Carsley. Obviously, Eddie Howe probably been more ideal for me, of course, but I think that's so hard to try and take away from Newcastle. I think he wants to be at club level at this moment of time. But I think about Lee Carsley as well is I think you mentioned, Henry, about how Southgate was, how it's kind of like a Southgate region, if you will. I wouldn't be surprised if that is what the FA want, though. So I think it could be a very, very interesting kind of decision how they kind of go for it. But also about Lee Carsley as well is he plays some really, really good attacking football as well. So that's another thing to kind of like add into the basket, if you will. So yeah, I think Lee Carsley, although he's quite a rogue name, and I don't think he get many plaudits or excitement, I think he could be a really good rogue shout. But yeah, I think for me, I'd like to have like an English manager at the helm, but Eddie Howe would be perfect. I'm not a fan of Graham Potter, but I think Lee Carsley could be like a really good rogue shout. And he's got a great track record of working with young players as well. And you look at our best players now, it's Cole Palmer, it's Bellingham, etc., etc. So that could kind of blend quite nicely.
Yeah, so there you go. There's who the boys think the next England manager should be. For me, I don't care, long as you win something. Just that's the main factor, that the main way managers are assessed. Just win something. I don't care what it is, whether that's the Nations League thing or if that's a Euros or a World Cup. Just win something, please. End the long wait. That's all I care about. But anyway, on to Norwich. We're going to talk about managers and what new ones should be coming in. Johannes Hoff Thorup had his first game of pre-season. Norwich played Northampton. Henry, you were there, and Will, you watched it on the page stream on Canaries TV. Well, whatever people think of that, they can let us know or let you know. But because I know a few people don't really like paying for those pre-season friendlies, but it's watching Norwich, so we should all be happy about it anyway. But Norwich ran out with a 3-0 win. Jonathan Rowe, who else, scored 2 goals in the opening 15 minutes as Norwich really cruised during the first half. And then for the second half, Will's dreams were answered. They put out a full youth 11 for the second half. Look at him, he's buzzing with it, arms up in the air, celebrating it like an England goal almost. But they came out, and then, well, for the academy, who else? Ken Abbo got on the score sheet with about 2 minutes to go, and it sounded very positive from what you two were saying from in our WhatsApp group chat about the way some players were playing, and some players maybe working their way into the first team or into consideration for the Belgian tour they're now doing. Norwich City's next friendly is with Club Brugge on Wednesday evening. I think that's a 5:30 kickoff. So if anyone's able to watch that, then brilliant. I hope you enjoy it. But from two people who actually watched the game, what did you think of that? Albeit Northampton a lower league opposition, and Norwich really should have always cruised it despite not playing for such a long time and it being their first game under a new manager. Did you see maybe clear advancements in the play style that Thorup is going to be using? And what do you think the key sorry, I'm losing the words here. What do you think the key features, are going to be of a Johannes Hoff Thorup team at Norwich City into the new season?
Yeah, I really enjoyed watching the game, actually. There was so many kind of different systems at times as well to kind of really get your teeth into. And I think the main one was like a 3-2-5 formation in build-up. And Montoya would like invert in field with Duffy, and it was Hills actually played, didn't he, first half as well? Yes. And it went really nicely. And I think it was 3 minutes in, and Norwich constructed like this absolutely like superb move. It was crazy. Like they got from Brad Hills to like the opposition goal in the space of a second. It was just so crisp and so clean to watch. And I kind of noticed during the game as well that at times there was like 4 players like coming in field to kind of like create like a box in the midfield in deep areas to try and build combinations and then try and expand past the lines, really. So I found it really, really interesting across the game. And I don't know about you, Henry, but I thought Shane Duffy on the ball was absolutely excellent. I found it so kind of crazy to say that, because I was heavily on the mindset that I thought Shane Duffy would be the one to struggle the most in this setup. But I'm sure we'll get to the academy players that impress as well later on. But Shane Duffy did brilliantly, and I think I've got more confidence for him now going into the new season as well. But also as well, I did have like not a few kind of issues, but I thought like one main issue of the actual performance, in my opinion, was at times I kind of felt we like retreated too deep during some parts of the game. I know like a lot of the play so far has kind of been exaggerated around like possession and wanted to build from the back, but I kind of noticed a few times how we went back so deep so soon at times, especially when like we could have pressed perhaps. But look, I'm sure like that's still to come. But I saw so many like different shapes as possession as well. It was like a 4-4-2 at times. It was a 4-3-3. So it's so good to see a manager that has got different kind of structures for like different scenarios and in different areas of the pitch as well. So I'm very, very excited about how it's all going to turn out in for the Oxford game, of course. But yeah, right now, really, really encouraging. I think it's a really good start for pre-season, and Shane is good on the ball. Who knew? Who knew that?
Yeah, he did sort of turn into prime Maldini, really, Shane Duffy. He was winning everything, really comfortable on the ball, hard hitting with his tackles. That's everything you want. And what I find interesting is he was actually playing at the left centre-back position. So we obviously signed Cordoba with visions of him probably being on the left and Duffy on the right. So Duffy was on the different side and looked comfortable. So hopefully, if he's comfortable on a side that he's not necessarily familiar with, that would then set him up well when he is on his more natural right-hand side come the season. But again, my big takeaway from the first half, when we played almost the first teamers, were the youngsters who have sort of made that jump up. You look at Montoya. I'm fully in on Montoya. I thought his performances were excellent. His attacking and will to get forward was really good. And what I love about him, he doesn't stand off his man. He always goes and tackles and wins the ball and then looks to progress it forward. And sort of similar to McCallum and Yanulis, we've always had that sort of recruitment drive in our left backs to get attacking left backs. And that certainly seems to be the case with Montoya as well. So I know a couple of weeks ago on this podcast, I hadn't really seen much of Montoya and was dubious as to whether we actually needed two left backs. But no, I'd still bring one through the door, but I'm fully on board with Montoya. I think he's ready by far. And Brad Hill as well. What a young player he looks to be. Anyone who knows me knows that I actually really rated Ben Gibson because of his ball delivery and because of his passing ability. Well, Brad Hills is just as good and at least, 10 years younger, probably more. So, yeah, Brad Hills really did impress me. The way he'd just ping balls to the attackers without even thinking about it, it did get me really excited. The only concern I'd have is probably the most hyped up Norwich player going into this season was Abu Kamara. And I think, to be honest, he had quite a poor game. I think he, when he took on his man, he then didn't really know what to do, whether to play another pass, whether to go for goal itself, or so I'm putting it down to one bad game because obviously we all know what he could do at Portsmouth last season in League One. So wasn't impressed with him on the day, but hopefully it was just an off day. But yeah, on the whole, really impressive. Really impressed with that team in the first half.
Yeah, so there you go. Some young players already impressing, Montoya and Hills, of course. Well, you mentioned there, Henry, about a left back, and that brings us very kindly on to the news that Norwich City have been linked with a left back, and Johannes Hoff Thorup even said in his post-match presser that the search is still very much on, and that is advancing quickly. And a name which has arisen is Callum Doyle. He was on loan at Leicester City last season, of course, ended up winning the championship. He was also at Coventry City the year before that, who ended up in a playoff final. So he's not exactly a bad player, and he's a player who can play well in a very good team. And that would be a superb bit of business for Norwich. A young player from Manchester City's academy coming in on loan. I believe he's only 21 years old. So much potential, which has already been shown in this very division. And then if you have Montoya as a backup, sounds as if that's not exactly going to be too bad either. And then with the centre halves we already have, it's probably, I would imagine it's most likely going to be Duffy and Cordoba as the main two. But sounds as if having Brad Hills there as another option isn't going to be too bad. Well, he had a fantastic year with Accrington Stanley on loan. Pretty sure he won Fans Player of the Season, or it was either that or Players Player of the Season at the club. He was captain, for God's sake, of the team, where he's a loan player at 20 years old, and he's captaining a side who, I believe they're League Two, Accrington Stanley, but still, that is absurd. A lone player with the armband on, that just shows that he's already got the qualities to go and be a top player. And Will has probably written that about 500 times over the last season. But that brings us kindly on to the youth team that came out for the second half. A lot of familiar names if you've read any of Will's articles or any of it, or even some of the names we've been talking about over the last few weeks on the podcast. But what did you two make of that youth team that came out for the second half? One player that caught the eye massively was Kellen Fisher. So I'd like to see what you two thought about that, because I didn't watch the performance, so I can only go off what social media says and your words. But what did you think of that youth team that came out for the second half? Because these could be players that, under Thorup's ideology as a coach, could be featuring quite a bit over the coming season, maybe in some cup games or if we have a bad injury crisis, these players could be the ones to step up, by the way it's sounding after this pre-season match.
Yeah, so you spoke there about Callum Fisher. He was, without a doubt, the star of the show in the second half. He came out with the armband. So, yeah, sort of carrying on the theme of youngsters captaining sides. And he was phenomenal. What I found interesting was, for a lot of people who watch the Norwich first team, we're familiar with seeing Callum Fisher at right back as that second choice right back option. But he actually played in midfield. He was sort of kept switching between sort of like the number 6 position and then the right of a 3. And he was just bossing it, always really good in his tackling, always moving it forward, playing the sensible balls. And yeah, he's someone who I wouldn't be surprised if he gets gamed, especially in that centre mid position. With performances like that, you'd probably much rather him over someone like Liam Gibbs, who is sort of whose career at Norwich has sort of stalled really. So yeah, it's definitely his performance definitely impressed Thorup without a shadow of a doubt. Other players I was really impressed with was Shipley, left back. I thought he had quite a good game, and yeah, and I think it was Finley Welsh. Finley Welsh on the left of, or no, on the right of the right of midfield. He was brilliant. He was always pressing, and that JJ, I've butchered the pronunciation, I think, but all right, JJ, yeah, he was really impressive. He for me, one of the most important things is actually going for attempts from outside the area, and he wasn't afraid to pull the trigger if he has it. He's also really good at tackling. His pressing was really good. So yeah, it wouldn't surprise me if he gets a few minutes against Stevenage in the Carabao Cup as well.
Yeah, I love seeing them all play. It was great. I think JJ was superb. Albeit actually, it felt like during the game against Northampton, we saw him more on the ball compared to off the ball. And actually on the ball, he was really, really good. And normally his biggest strength is actually out of possession. So it was quite nice to kind of see him play really, really confidently, playing vertical passes fluently as well. So that was really encouraging. Yeah, I think Finley Welsh was brilliant as well, Henry, as you said. I think within what we're to kind of see from him this season is like end product. And I think like the 4 crosses he actually put into the box in the second half were really, really good and good quality as well. But he just needs to try and produce that over the course of the season, as I think that is probably one of his main developmental points for him to really improve. But yeah, I also want to say Ademiega as well. What I like about Ademiega actually is, and I want to kind of touch on this as well, guys, because I think this centre half position is so kind of hard to call, like who's going to actually stay. But what I liked about Ademiega on Saturday was the way he was actually instructing like the midfield players like where to stand, so like he can pass the ball forwards. And just ever since like Emmanuel came into the building, I think last year, he's got such great like leadership qualities, and he just improves the performance levels of everyone. And I think like Uriah actually bounced off that as well. So yeah, I'm always a big fan of Ademiega. And what I want to kind of touch on this is because I think in Thorup's system, where it's going to be so like possession-based orientated, we're going to have so much of the ball, and teams are going to try and counter attackers. And I love Brad. I think he's really, really good on the ball, and I think he's going to be a great prospect. But I really think you need, as a centre-back, I think you need a profile centre-back who's athletic and quick and strong. And I think the best player actually at that is Ademiega. I think Ademiega probably needs to do like a bit more work technically on the ball to maybe sharpen up a little bit. I remember one pass during the second half, it actually went quite, it went astray. So obviously that needs to sharpen up a little bit. But I just feel when you play so like possession based, you kind of need like some pace in the back line to try and nullify the counter-attacking threat. I mean, I'm pretty sure that's the way that Blackburn are going to play against us, that Sheffield United are going to play against us, that also going to play against us. So we've got to be like very, very careful about that and consider actually having like that sort of profile in there. Obviously, Tomkinson as well, I thought was really good as well. So really good performances, and I'm really happy to see that Manning and Reneke also played as well for the first team as well. So that's great. But I just want to try and like engage your thoughts really. Like, are you still for like Brad Hills to kind of be the one to kind of break through, or are you kind of having second thoughts, or who do you want there?
From what I've seen, I think Brad Hills is the one out of the three to be the one to kick on. And then probably, I know Adeboyega was brilliant, but I thought Tomkinson just showed that little bit more on the ball against Northampton. And obviously he's got more first team experience as well when he did play the odd cup game last season. So it wouldn't surprise me if both Adeboyega and Tomkinson go back out on loan this season. But yeah, if one of those three breaks through, or even Jaden Warner, put him into the mix as well. But I think yeah, if one of them breaks through, it probably will be Brad Hills.
Yeah, no, big bad Hillsy. No, that's who I want. Bring him in. Him and Cordoba at the back. The Panamanian Devil, big bad Hills at the back. We're going to be cruising. Well, hopefully cruising. Let's hope so. I'm all for it because I do really like the look of Brad Hills. I've watched quite a lot of sort of when he was starting his loan with Accrington Stanley. I always sort of would keep my eye out for their highlights packages and stuff like that, and sort of like their written reports. And he was always a name that was coming up with how impressive he was and such a big presence at the back for them. Of course, it is a big jump going from a side in the lower leagues of the EFL to go straight into one of the hardest divisions to play in the world for quite a few players, really, especially someone who's not played a single minute of first team football for Norwich City. But I think if you're going with this whole thing of Thorup and trusting in youth, it seems as if any youth player who is going to be starting quite a lot in the pre-season games, it looks as if he's instantly going to be the one, albeit Cordoba's not going to be back just yet for pre-season. He's going to be returning soon. But clearly there is a big trust of, well, even the three you both named there alongside Tomkinson and Adeboyega. If he's the one that he's going with from the off to start in the first team 11 rather than the youth one, it's clear to me that, at least just based off that, to me it seems that he's the one who's got the most trust. And although Adeboyega had a very good loan spell with Walsall, pretty sure he scored in his 3 first games there, and he even scored quite a few goals for the academy. So very rarely see a goal-scoring centre-back, but he seems to be the one. And then Tomkinson as well, decent loan spell with Bradford, but maybe, as Henry said, they might need another one just to go for it. And maybe if you begin the season with Brad Hills there and he ends up needing a loan spell, you never know. This is just things that are out of our control, really. It's down to the manager and the player to decide that. But I think Brad Hills, I agree with Henry there. I think he's the one that is going to be the man to kick on and get into that first team. But from one academy aspect to another, because Norwich have hired a brand new head of academy football. Now, Will, I'm going to let you take the floor with this. This is your forte. So let's hear all about the new man brought in. And what do you think? Is he going to be a big benefactor for Norwich City, or is this an appointment maybe you're a little bit more sceptical about? Of course, you already voiced your thoughts in an article, but let's hear your actual words on camera about the new head of academy football.
Yeah, so if I check out my article, then please do, as I might miss some points out here, but I'll just try and go through it vaguely. Yeah, first of all, I'm really happy about it. I think he's got a really good CV. He has some really good success at Spurs as well. So I'm very, very happy about that. But there's quite a lot of things that I think he needs to freshen up, I feel, because I think obviously the first one is the pathway, because obviously we've seen under the Wagner, Weaver and Webber campaign, it just went a bit all toxic. It wasn't healthy. It wasn't there. It wasn't apparent. Yeah, I think there needs to be an alliance between Thorup, Napa and himself, because that's going to be so vital. I mean, we saw it in 2018 when we had obviously Webber, Farker and co. There was a clear alliance there to bring players towards the first team, and that's got to be, that has to be apparent again, because it's so important for this football club to try and raise funds and by developing academy talent. That is how you do that as well. Also, the play style needs to kind of be more consistent as well. I know in a fans forum, which we're going to touch on later, actually, I think someone asked about the play style in the academy sides, and although I feel like it's kind of been hidden actually in recent years that like that the academy played the same way. I would say it hasn't at all really. You look at the under 18s and it's very much kind of like a direct style of play, wanted to kind of use like target men and try and build from that front really. And then you then go to under 21s, and that style of play is so proactive, it's so brave, and they try and play out from the back. So you basically got like two opposites, like repelling. So it's quite weird, like how a player could almost settle in immediately. I mean, I think we saw some case studies actually during the back end of the season as well with Emmanuel Smith and Alex Roberts. They're both two really good strikers, but I think they found it hard to kind of deal with the fact that they're going to see more of the ball compared to 18th level, where like they see the ball about once every like 10 minutes at times. So it's so kind of contrasting and different. So it's got to try and bring some consistency back into the setup really. And it's going to be really interesting to see. Obviously, I think Napa stated in his press conference availment with Thorup that he wanted to take academy development to the next level. So he's got a big job to deal with, because if you want to take it to the next levels, if you will, then you've got to try and do better than what you did before with Aaron's, etc. and co. So that's going to be so interesting. And I just think, like guys, there's so much things to do. I just think it's going to be like quite a big like transitional season for the academy. Really, I think there's so many things that like it's got to observe, assess, but like replace. Maybe I don't know. So yeah, I think it's going to take some time to kind of see like the benefits come through. But rest assured, like there is some great talent. I mean, we saw it actually against Northampton. The likes of Gabe Forsyth actually almost scored that third goal. So you've got Gabe Forsyth, Elliot Miles, Reneke, etc. So there's still clear talent there. It's just it might take some time to kind of see a play style which is similar at 18th level and 21's level, because the under 18s coaching staff especially, they're going to have to kind of like play like a new way, which like they're not used to, and I wonder how they're going to try and adapt to that really. So I'm very confident about this new change. I think he's going to bring in some really good and exciting ideas, but and it's also going to try and center around development first as well, which we all want to see, and try and get in some players into the first team as well. So I'm very excited about it, but I think it's going to take some time.
Yeah. No, there's no secret about that. It could well take its time, unless you never know. And these players are going to probably take time to learn the proper systems and playing it well. And the only way I'd imagine that they're probably going to get called up is by playing it very well. There's no secret about that. They're going to have to know the system that they're playing in inside out, and they're going to need to know how to do it. And even, well, you mentioned about the fan forum, we'll go straight on to that. That leads actually quite nicely into some of the words about Johannes Hoff Thorup in that fan forum. He said he wants players who have a good footballing knowledge and they can play in many different systems. Again, that's something the pair of you both mentioned about what was going on during the Northampton game. A lot of different shapes in and out of possession and having to rotate positions almost in what's become a very common feature of modern day football. But this Thorup wants players like that, and there's no secret. He's made that very clear whenever he's had spoken words to bring to the fans. But yet again, a big talking point, Adam Eder. It seems as if we're covering this every single week with his saga going on. Will he go to Celtic? Will he stay at Norwich? Can Thorup change the environment? Which is, again, what he said in the fan forum. Is he going to change the environment around Eder and not the player? Is he going to make it finally a positive environment for him to be around, and he can crack on and no longer be maybe a scapegoat really to Norwich fans, because that seems as if that is what he has become and what he has really been over the last few years. But will he finally kick on? Because Celtic is still hot on the case. He was a notable omission from the Northampton game, but that is because he only came back to training about a day or two before that game. But it's clear to see still Thorup wants this to work for Adam Eder at this football club. Still, I mean, we ask this every week, but your standpoints, Will and Henry, what do you think is the best plan of action now that pre-season is gotten underway? Is it time to give Eder that playing time and just see first if this is going to work, or are we destined that regardless what happens and if he plays or not, he's going to be playing in the green and white hoops in a few weeks?
I don't think my position has changed, to be honest. But what I would say is that he definitely needs minutes in a Norwich shirt under Thorup. So if I was Thorup, I'd start him for basically all of the pre-season games. But I still would be looking to sell him to Celtic. I think, unfortunately, I do like Adam Eder, but his time at Norwich has come to its natural end, I'd say. So I would look to cash in on him still, but again, he needs minutes. So what's better than getting those minutes by playing matches for the first team? So yeah, for the pre-season games, I definitely would include him, and I reckon Eder will want to be included as well. He's not one to throw his toys out of the pram, so to speak, but yeah, I would play him, but no, my stance hasn't changed. I'd look to cash in on him probably at the earliest possible opportunity.
Yeah, I agree still. One thing I will say though, which I think is really important actually, is how the fans are now starting to kind of like get back on the side of him as well. I think that's really important actually, and should give him some more confidence as well if he is to play and make an impact in this team. But as I keep saying every week, like not cheap to cash. If a good offer this week comes in the region like north of £10 million, then I would think about selling him because we need the money and we need to. Obviously, I know the Callum Doyle link is probably in the background as well, but there's still some positions that the VAT not like need to recruit. You need a more technically gifted attacking midfielder. You need probably, if either Nunes, Sarah, or McLean go, you need a new midfielder there as well. So there's so much kind of things to kind of be ironed out. And I think if his money will go to that, then I'm all on board on it, really. But yeah, if he does come back and make an impact with the team, then I'm more than happy as well, because obviously I think Fob actually stated, didn't he, against the after the Northampton game, sorry, that Barnes is still struggling with an injury as well. So we're going to actually need to kind of use somebody there, aren't we, really? And I'm not convinced that Abid Kamara can kind of play that role. I think he's more of a inverted right winger. So let's see. But I would sell him for sure.
What I will say as well, this does have a feeling of going all the way to the 11th hour in terms of Adam Eder. I don't think, like Will was saying about getting an offer in quickly, I'd love that, but it does have a feeling that it's going to drag on. And it wouldn't surprise me if Eder does get that move to Celtic on deadline day.
Yeah, no, it's a very fair point. It could happen. Well, it could happen today. It could happen at the end of the window in a month's time. That just no one knows what's going to happen with that. Of course, the money has to be right ultimately. There's been many reports that Norwich want around £5 to £6 million. Could they maybe squeeze a bit more out with all this high praise and see how he kicks on in pre-season? Who knows? That's just, again, that's a factor we don't decide. That's all down to the player trying to perform, and if anything, sell himself more to Celtic, make them, I'm sure they'll be watching his pre-season with a keen eye and seeing how well he does in the system, see if it actually suits him. Because if the system doesn't suit him, then Thorup is effectively just going to probably not want him anymore, or maybe he'll want to try and make it work. He's a player who, I'm going to sound like a broken record because I'm saying it all the time, this is a player he wants to desperately get the best out of and make it work for him at this football club. But it just doesn't seem that he agrees with that either. Maybe his heart probably is set on going to Celtic. He very much enjoyed his time, had one of the best spells of his short career so far. And then other words in the fan forum as well. Well, Will, you went back to the academy in terms of how they're going to be playing like in that same style. Of course, myself and Henry aren't really as involved with that youth side, but I think that's refreshing to hear. I do like that because, again, it goes back to what I was saying earlier, and yourself as well, in terms of you can have these players learning that system and it will work for them. And evidently, from what you were saying about the academy team that played that second half against Northampton, it can work, and even the goal they scored, we got to talk about that. It was like a 30 passing move to get from one side of the pitch to the other. And then, albeit it was a bit of a fortunate goal for Ken Abbo just after the original shot was saved by Forsyth. But again, that is just 30 passing moves just to get from one side to the other. And these are youth players doing this. So again, just the excitement can continue to build, can't it? Like evidently this is going to be a heavy possession-based system. We already know that, and well, Spain proved it last night. Heavy possession and working hard off the ball, it can get you very big results, can't it?
Yeah, I think also with obviously Napa and Thorup wanted to try and bring through some academy players. I think it's going to take much quicker if they play the same way instead of playing like all these different formations and stuff. I saw someone actually during the week, I think, on Twitter say that they'd actually be more in favour of seeing an academy side that play all different formations. And yes, I'm all for that actually for sure. But I think now's a time, especially where I think fans and obviously Napa is kind of set the bar really high to actually get players into the first team. And I think the best way to do that is actually implement a style of play which is apparent for the under 18s, 21s, and through to the first team, really. So I don't think it helps anyone if you're like doing all these different stuff as well. So yeah, I think that is a really, really big component to kind of how we're going to try and get these players through to the first team. Also, I'll say again, I think the fact now also in the championship, you're allowed, I think it's 9 subs as well. I think that just gives more chances for the likes of Gabe Forsyth and Elliot Miles to really try and see a pathway in that first team, because there will be some bench spots open next season for sure, especially when the squad is probably going to be a bit more streamlined, especially when players aren't actually leaving at the moment as well. So it's got so many kind of intriguing components to it. But yeah, if Norwich are to get more players like through to the 50 from the academy, then playing it in the same way isn't it going to help that?
Yeah, and like I was saying, it was clear in the Northampton game that both the first half team and the second half team were playing in exactly the same style. They were interchanging positions. So yeah, this is a tactical. This is sort of like a tactical system that runs throughout the club, whether that's at youth level or first team level. But staying on the Northampton game, there was one thing that really frustrated me, and if it carries on, it will just keep picking away at me. Did anybody notice? Obviously, all eyes were on Thorup, right? Because it was his first game in charge. On your specialised coach, you had your initials. He had JH, not JHT.
Yeah,
That can't happen, right? He needs that T on there. If you're going to have your initials, go all out. Don't be silly and just exclude the Thorup part. Like, get JHT on there. The club need to print new cagoules and jackets and coats with his actual initials on. Because if he just keeps on having JH, that will just really annoy me.
Do you think it's personal choice?
It might be personal choice, but this is something we need to find out. One of the journalists needs to ask Thorup about his personal choice of initials, because yeah, he cannot be going on with just a JH. It just looks wrong.
Well, if Gary Gowers ever sorts us a Thorup interview and one of us has to do it, we'll make sure to ask that question, because as soon as you said the code, I knew exactly what you were on about. I saw the picture and JH, yeah, that is odd. You know, it's not his full name. You know, you need, as you say, you need the T there. You got to have the Thorup part. That's ultimately, well, that's his name. He needs it there. But anyway, that was, well, I was about to say that was all the nonsense, because we don't have Jack here, that we don't have any quick fire hot takes, quick fire questions to go off. That there's no controversial or just funny stuff to even do this week. And unfortunately, it's going to be the same next week, unless we can potentially get a guest in or we think of them ourselves going forward for next week. But yeah, there's none of that, unless anyone quickly off the dome can think of one hot take or whatever. But I'm guessing probably not, because Jack usually, I don't know how long that takes him to plan 10 of them, but he gets them ready straight away and brings them in. But yeah, so that's unfortunately as much nonsense as we're going to be able to bring this time around. But hopefully this time next week we can change that up, albeit we'll be without Jack again. But anyway, there you have it. There is all of your NCFC content for the week. It will be a very interesting one. Norwich have got to play 2 games of pre-season in Belgium against Club Brugge, who are Champions League hopefuls and won the Belgian league. So that'll be a very interesting test. Then they've got to play another strong outfit in Standard Liège. So 2 good tests in order to see how this system is going to work and how it will cope against teams that are on paper better than Norwich. And Christos Zolis is going to be playing against his old team when he has a run out for Bruges. So we'll have to see how he fares against his old employers and what could have been his new manager. But anyway, there you have it. That is all we've got covered for this week on the MyFootballWriter podcast. If you did enjoy, if you're watching on YouTube, make sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel, continue your brilliant support of us so far. If you're listening on Spotify and you've downloaded the episode, thank you again for your continued support on that platform as well. Make sure to check us out on all of our social media channels and the website as well. If you fancy writing about anything related to Norwich City, just get in touch with you'll have all the contact details on the website. Get in touch with us. But anyway, I've been Freddie Humphrey Wakefield. They have been Henry Miller and Will Grant. It's goodbye for now. We'll see you for the next video on the channel, and we'll see you in a week's time for another bit of NCFC ramble and nonsense on the MFW podcast. We will see you then. Goodbye for now and see you later.